Hi, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, joined by a very special guest, kind of a dream guest for Peter Franson right now. Jeremy Adams, a writer with tons of credits in TV, including 16 episodes of Supernatural, a boatload of DC and Lego related animated shows and movies, and then more recently, he's have been a big name, a buzzworthy name in DC Comics, writing The Flash from 2021 to 2023 thereabouts, writing Green Lantern from 2023 until now, and just starting Aquaman this year. And my gosh, like The Flash is my second favorite superhero. Green Lantern is my first favorite, my ultimate superhero concept. And Aquaman is one that I've always thought that DC could do some awesome things with that they just never figured out the most obvious thing in my mind, which is what you have done. So I am looking forward to this, Jeremy. Thank you so much for making time for me.
I always joke I have like the Jeff Johns punch card. I'm like,
Yeah.
just okay. I did Flash, I did Green Lantern. Now I'm doing Aquaman. I got to start a company next year. Did you read my Flash?
Oh yes, but I had
Oh,
that was like I was catching up because I took after the new 52 I bought less and less and less, and I eventually was just done, and I was like, I'm going to explore video games. So for 8 years I really just got into video games, and then DC Universe Infinite came around, and I was like, oh, I can pay this one price a month, be on a bit of a delay, and then I can just recklessly try stuff and not feel jaded when I'm running into title after title that's not for me. And so I really started catching up.
that's the story of my life.
I was just binging on DC's New 52 where I left off and forward. And so, yeah, I was catching up on your Flash run most of the time while you were in it. I caught up to you toward the end of your run. Okay, so
Well, the
I want to.
DC, the DC. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say Marvel Unlimited and the DC. I like that has been a saving grace because the amount of room I have for comic books is reached maximum breaking points to where my
Yeah,
wife is like, what are we doing with these? And I'm like, I don't know. We'll put them in a corner, you know.
yeah, yeah. Nice. Okay, so I've got close to 20 questions I want to ask. So we're going to fly. We're going to go, baby. And I want to get inside your
Good.
skull on some stuff. I want to start with just some broad stuff about your faith, since, and, I mean, there's so many nerdy things I would love to talk about, but since you're on like a Christian-y channel and Christian-y YouTube thing, your
Right.
podcast, we're going to talk about the Christian-y stuff most of all. Starting with your faith. Okay, so am I late? A few months ago, I put out that compilation video of all the times I wondered if you were a Christian, based on like just little things I was picking up on in your reading,
Yeah.
and then I sent that to you, and I just thought maybe you'd get a kick out of it if I mean, it was long, it was super long, but. So that was like it's pretty recent for me to realize that you were a Christian and have that confirmed by looking at your Twitter thing, something you said on Twitter around Easter. Am I late to the discovery among readers that you're a Christian, or do you feel like that's been widely known for a while, or a lot of people still don't know?
It's a weird thing because I've been very open about my faith for forever. It's been a hilarious journey of being in Hollywood, and I worked for this one producer once, and I like snuck him, C.S. Lewis's like Great Divorce into his bag, and like I would, but I've always been a pretty outspoken Christian. It definitely is something that everybody knows that knows me, but also the way that I broke into the industry was such a God thing that he did it in such a way that it was very much like, well, you can never tell your origin story without telling this God story. They were like inextricably linked. And it's sometimes, being a Christian or being a person of faith, it feels uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable because you're like, oh, somebody's going to think I'm weird or whatever. And some people will think you're weird. But the reality is, generally, those stories can be very encouraging to people too. And if you don't know it, I'll go briefly through it. But the origin stories, I came out here in '99 from University of Arizona. It was 112 degrees when I left, or no, it was even higher than that. It was crazy. And I moved to LA, and I just started working and trying to get a job in the industry, which was really, really hard. And about 10 years later, I haven't broken in. I was at a Doctor Who night with some friends of mine, and there was this guy named Jim Krieg who had said, "Oh, I'm a writer." I'm like, "Yeah, sure you are. Everybody's a writer." And he wanted to read something of mine. I gave it to him and he says, "Oh, this is crap." But like the good kind of crap. I was like, "I don't know what that means." A couple months later, we were going to church at this place called Bel Air Pres up here, and there was this really great sermon about Moses and the burning bush. And I remember being like, man, that's what I need. I don't need a still small voice. I need a burning bush. Like at this point, I need clear direction on where to go, you know? And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, was like, "Well, have you prayed about it?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, of course I prayed about it. I pray about it, you know. And she's like, "You should pray about it tonight." I was like, "Fine." And so I did. And the next morning, I get a call from Jim, and he goes, "I know this is weird, but I was praying last night, and I felt like God wanted me to be your mentor, and I want to put you on this show, but I need you to do these tasks." And it was exactly the prayer I had prayed the night before. Like, I just need to know what to do next. Just tell me what to do. And so I did those tasks, which were hilarious because they were really a way to vet me to see if I really wanted this thing. And that led to my first job on Green Lantern, the animated series. So that was literally how I got in the industry. And it was such a not by my might, you know, but at the same time, if I didn't have scripts, if I didn't have that wherewithal, I always think about David in a situation like that. If he wasn't a shepherd that like killed lions and bears and stuff, then walking out to face Goliath would probably be insurmountable. But like if you fought a lion and a bear, you're probably like, yeah, I'm going to take this guy, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So having scripts, having things available was really important. But I can never, it's always one of those things people go, "Well, how did you get started?" I'm like, "Well, here we go. This is going to be weird. Get ready," you know?
Yeah.
And it's weird to people that aren't familiar with that. But if you've been in the Christian life for a long time, it becomes very real. And I never thought I'd be one of those people that had those God moments. But then now I look back and I've had a lot. So,
Yeah. Now, did you grow up in the faith? And if so, like what kind of like churches or denominations have kind of been formative for you?
so hilariously, and I won't get too deep into it, but my parents got divorced when I was very young. My father went from being a Pentecostal minister. I didn't know that guy, who he was an artist, but they broke up, and then he really got into the occult.
Oh,
And it was crazy. It was like, "Oh, you can sleep in the altar room with the pentagrams or whatever, you know."
wow.
But my mom was steadfast in her faith, on fire for God, with three kids, no child support, you know, going back to school. And I saw this incredible woman of faith, and we grew up in a very Pentecostal Assemblies of God was the one I grew up in.
Okay.
And I watched this interesting dynamic take place, which was my mom, who was always faithful and always, you know, looking to God and Jesus for everything, and would tell us to do that too. And we lived a very, you know, poor to sooner later, maybe a little middle class. And then I saw my dad, who looked like he was having a great time. And then
Hmm.
and as we started getting older, it started shifting. And it was just an interesting object lesson on living for yourself and not living for yourself. And then my mom ended up getting married to the love of her life, and she has an amazing, I mean, she's amazing.
Hmm.
And she's a saint. And my father, who I love in its own unique way, you know, I think he has trials and tribulations. And so I got to kind of see that firsthand. And my real, you know, I was saved when I was very young, but my real formative like declaration of faith came my freshman year of high school, because I'd seen my dad doing this stuff. I've seen my mom doing this stuff, and friends that were atheists or friends that were Catholic, whatever it was. And I was like, "Well, what is it? What do I believe? Like, what do I
Hmm.
really believe?" You know? And mere Christianity was such a huge catalyst for me. It was a massive, well-reasoned, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of like, "No, this is it. This is what I believe." You know, my mom
Hmm.
was right,
Hmm.
as always, you know. And then you just walk out that process of you know, I guess in the Old Testament, Israel means to wrestle with God. And it's like, I feel like that's our life a little bit. The sanctification process of being Christian.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't mean you can't have questions and you can't wrestle with things. And that's definitely been the case. but I enjoy it so much more now because
Hmm.
usually, um, uh, Christ is proved out in my own life.
Hmm.
I both become more orthodox and I both become more like the thief on the cross, who's just
Hmm.
yeah, he says I'm good, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the thing I hold on to because even with Christianity, we get into infighting all the time.
Yes,
And
unfortunately.
you have to pull back and go, yeah, we all need a savior. Christ has given us that in the barest way possible, being like the bar to entry is belief,
Yeah.
is both hard and not hard, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I've been, straight and narrow and pretty much a square because of it.
Okay, so on that topic, most of your screenwriting has been for kids and family projects. Why have you gravitated toward that kind of work? And does that have anything to do with maybe wanting to avoid certain types of content or issues your faith would make you uncomfortable with that you're typically not going to find in
Right.
children and family entertainment? Did that play a role, or do you just like that
No,
the audience?
I think that's what was afforded to me. I think also that
Hmm.
I had two young girls
Yeah.
that was great too. But then you look at something like Mortal Kombat, like I've written four Mortal Kombat movies that are incredibly violent
Yeah.
and vulgar, and so it's a thing again that I wrestle with sometimes, but like I love action movies. I love martial arts a great
Yeah.
deal. I always say Jesus saved my soul, martial arts saved my life because I was bullied mercilessly in junior high.
Oh.
And I love Mortal Kombat, but I also, as a writer, I'm not sitting there trying to make a character. Like I can't take Mephisto and make him, a believer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're
Like,
like, please. Yeah. Like if there's any like atheists that would tune in or something and like, wait a minute. He's a Christian, you know.
yeah,
He's not gonna like have Batman do like a sinner's prayer and be all weepy and stuff and turn
right,
to Jesus and stuff
right,
like,
right,
no. I mean,
right.
the characters are meant to serve a certain purpose, you know.
That's correct. And also, I take into huge consideration what has gone before and what is currently going on. And I'm very cautious of that. So, like, if I did something with, so I had Wally have a conversation with the Spectre,
Yeah, we're gonna
and
talk about
and
that.
that worked. Okay, that works in my head because the Spectre is the spirit of vengeance. And by the way, it's a fictional universe. Is there, the quote unquote Judeo-Christian God is, the presence in this universe, but it's not one for one. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so recognizing that, it's like I can have a conversation, and also I can have the conversation because Linda's parentage is Korean, and her mom in previous issues like tried to get him to go to church and like all this stuff. And
I
so
was wondering
it's
about
not
that
off
because
the
I
table.
noticed that, and I knew, I knew that there was like a proliferation of specifically Korean Christian churches that I've just noticed in America over the years. And then you had Linda
Yeah,
praying, but I didn't remember that detail about, so I'd have to go
yeah.
and find out where that happened. But that's really interesting that that was not a wholly original thing that you were bringing in, but it had a
Oh,
sense
no.
of precedent.
Yeah. But it's also, as a writer too, it's like, can characters, other writers will make characters grow into some sort of morality or whatever. And I
Yeah.
think I also have that opportunity, but I also want it to make sense. Like I really wanted to make sense. I didn't know that Hal Jordan was half Jewish until somebody, online had told me. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. This adds a new dynamic. So I kind of played with that. And then having been the former, spirit of vengeance, it's like, oh, I'm going to have a conversation between these two because I do like exploring that stuff. It's a huge part of my life. I love, and because of my father and my mother, it's like I had the occultic background of seeing what that looks like from an outside perspective in a very strange way. But I'm a Christian too, so I like the interplay of supernatural and what that means. Even when I worked on supernatural, it's like I love the magic stuff because it affords you to tell a more like listen, when you're dealing with supernatural, you're dealing with supernatural. So then
Yeah.
like you can dive into more philosophical and moral things. And it's interesting 'cause I grew up definitely during the satanic panic
Me too.
and which was which is wild. And people don't, oh, that didn't happen. I'm like, oh no, it did. But then at the same time, I can read, Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe or Lord of the Rings, and I'm fine, So, so contextualizing everything is important to me. But with the characters, yeah, I try to be like, you can't write Daredevil and him not be Catholic.
Hmm.
You know, you can't, you, you can't, I mean, you can, it's just not true to the character.
Yeah.
It's just like there's tons of characters I can write that, that it would be, I don't try to inject myself as much. I like to explore themes and topics,
Yeah.
and I like to explore faith questions and stuff within the context of a story. But those are my favorite types of story. Like when you
Yeah.
watch old, Star Trek, they make you wrestle with an idea, a morality, like an issue, and it's never clear, and it's also interesting.
Yeah.
But I love all that stuff. I love Azrael. I was like, oh, there's an angel. I got to put an angel in here. Phantom Stranger to me, there was a great Secret Origins that really was steeped in uh, Christianity and like more Christian mythology that came out of it, like the Wandering Jew and stuff like that, which
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by. But um, yeah, I don't know what your question was, anyways. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that's
so
no, that's great. That's great.
I rambled.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Have you, before I get into the nitty gritty of some story stuff I want to ask you about, um, do you, have you experienced kind of any particular challenges or lessons learned that would that would lead you to have some concise advice for a Christian that's wanting to pursue a career in mainstream slash secular entertainment? Any tips that you would give? Any words of wisdom that you learned the hard way or that you knew in advance and that helped?
Yeah, I think you have to be true to your faith and you have to be true to you. I think that you will lose out on opportunities, a great deal of opportunities. And in retrospect, that's okay. I've never been in charge of my career anyways.
Yeah.
And so I think it's always important. I think it's also important to know that if you screw up and you do compromise on something, it is not the end of the world, and that His grace is sufficient, and then you can get up and you can keep going and you can keep trying. And the reality is we all want to be loved. And what I've found is that there's a myriad of opinions and philosophies. I think it's important to, the way I described it is that you can't just jump on a train by running headlong into it as it's moving. You have to come alongside of it. And I found a great deal of my opportunities. It hasn't been in the writing that there's necessarily been questions. A lot of times I find, at least I feel like, that I'm there because it's the relationships I develop in the meantime. And it's very little to do with the career wise, as much as it has to do with like befriending people
Hmm.
and being an example, or at least hopefully being an example. And I don't win all the time, but there are moments where God has used me in a really profound way that I realize, oh, okay, it's not
Hmm.
about what that guy could do for my career. It's about me being there for that guy where he's going through whatever it is. Um, it is hard. I mean, there are times that you have to figure out what battle you want to fight, and you have to determine, do you want to be in the arena? Because it's very easy to sit outside and judge everything. It's very hard to be in it and know that, well, maybe I can help this be not as egregious as maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe I can have a conversation about maybe that's not appropriate for this particular thing. And those are real conversations to have. And you're in a luxury position not to have a job and be on the outside, and cast aspersions to whoever's making the thing. But these are never made in a vacuum.
Hmm.
Nothing's ever made. It's incredibly collaborative.
Hmm.
You're dealing with tons of people that have a tons of points of view. And so you can pitch your point of view or whatever it is, and hopefully they'll take it, and sometimes they won't. And even if they won't, that's okay too. your job, at least I feel like my job is I present a different point of view a lot of times. And being a Christian in Hollywood, there are a bunch of us. It's just, in the industry, it's not that many, and they're not that verbal because, you can get kicked out for things, I
Mm,
guess. But most of the time, I've really had incredible conversations and interesting, like if you want to get into deep drama, you have to have a opposing point of view. You have
mm,
to wrestle through something and like, would that person say that or would that person not say that? It's like if I was writing Nightcrawler right now, I would have I think there should be more of a conversation about, like, is he being true to his faith that
mm.
has been critical to that character? And does he wrestle with that? Because all of us do, you know? And it's like, I remember seeing like one person writing him and he's, oh, he's devout, Catholic, and then another person writing it and he's sleeping around or whatever. And
Mm.
you're like, how do you square that?
Yeah,
You know? And do you? Do you
yeah,
think that's okay? And the person writing it, do you not know enough about this? Or, I mean, with Muslim characters as well, like, it's like they're very uh, conservative in their morality too. And so I get it. People don't want to have those conversations because they can be scary or whatever. But I also think that's one of the beautiful things about working in sci-fi and stuff is
mm,
you can do allegories and metaphor and
yeah.
everything. Of course, I just get caught up in like the serialized, oh my gosh, and now Hal's got the ring. And and in my head, I'm just a lot of it, some of it isn't forethought of like, oh, I'm gonna tell this story. It's some of it comes naturally and it's and I it again, because I'm writing, all of us that are writing stuff, it will mirror things in our own lives that we're thinking about and dealing with and whatever. But yeah, the advice would be keep going. Definitely, advice would be create your own things too, and just know when you're playing with somebody else's toys, you're playing with somebody else's toys, and they
Yeah.
have their own rules, and you don't get to come in and suddenly go, instead of an S on that chest, can we have an A? And it's like,
Yeah.
no, you can't. You know,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
don't get to make those rules. And people definitely have told me, no, you can't do that, or you can do that. And like I said, I'm never like, oh yeah, okay, they're all going to the Harvest Crusade or whatever, It's not, it's not like that.
Okay, great. So now, all right, I want to catch up. I loved all of that. We're going to go into kind of a rapid fire mode, though.
Sorry.
Okay, so if you want to be yes or no,
All right.
that's you certainly can.
All right.
But I want to hit some nitty gritty stuff. I'll try to give you context. Some of these are going to be deep cuts from a while back. The Flash 779. The Spectre tells Wally that everything that's been going on. Oh, actually, you know what? I don't need to ask this question because I was going to ask, the Spectre says it's all part of God's plan, and I was going to ask, how deeply in your headcanon do you try to make the DC universe and the God of the Bible compatible? You already addressed that. So let's jump actually to Green Lantern, Hal and Carol, that
Yes.
relationship.
Yes.
Do you hope in 20 years they will be thought of in the same way as Clark and Lois and Wally and Linda? Is that something you're looking to build? Can you even answer that right now? And what motivated you to make them a committed couple in your run right now?
Yes. Yes to all that. Mainly because they've been so hot and cold. I'm kind of like, well, they're either going to do it or they're not going to do it. They're either going to be or not to be. And because I often try to go where it hasn't, like if the pendulum's over here, I want to go over here. Like that's my goal in those situations. And in this particular one, I kept thinking about, well, the boyfriend's coming home, right? The person that you love, and really, it kind of happened with my mom and my stepdad. Now that they married, but everybody knew that they're meant to be together. But you know, Hal's kind of a screw up.
He's been playing the field for
Yeah,
decades.
yeah, and kind of a screw up. And so what I saw when I took over was because I had been writing Wally, and Wally to me is the most well-adjusted character in all of the DC universe. Like there's no one else. He's got a family. He loves his wife. He loves his kids, and it's awesome. And I'm like, that's great. And I was moving that book toward kind of a Fantastic Four vibe, and I really loved the family orientation of that. But Hal, there's a very early on, I have an issue with Hal and Barry, where they're looking out over the building and they're having this conversation about legacy characters because all of DC was suddenly like legacy characters, legacy characters, legacy characters. And I thought, well, what are these veterans are thinking? And what they're thinking is they kind of got their stuff together more than we do. And, there's that kind of feeling where Hal's like, oh man, am I missing out on life? Am I missing out on this other dimension of life? I know I love Carol.
Yeah.
Every reader knows he loves Carol.
Yeah, well, and as a reader,
Yes.
when Wally said, "Why is Carol getting engaged to somebody that's not
Right.
you?"
Very
I was
yeah.
like, "That's a page from my diary." You've been ripping pages from my diary, I'm convinced, in several of the things that you've brought
Right.
about, and that's one of the smaller ones. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just felt like this is, listen, somebody else will show up and break them up or whatever, but from my from my
oh
view,
no,
so it's twofold. It's like I want them together. The second part is very early on, probably because I have daughters and I don't do it perfectly all the time, but I definitely introduce more female superheroes. And Star Sapphire has been a hero in its past, or her past, but like we're like, I was talking to Wade last year and I was like, I mean, what if we just put Star Sapphire in the Justice League as the Lantern instead? Like, let's break her off and make her her own character so it's not just Hal's girlfriend. Let Star Sapphire be her own character that's her own powerful, interesting person. And that's what we've kind of been building to more and more and more as she gets a hold of realizing she can do this, understands the kind of understands how like complicated it is and hard it is, and
yes,
I hope that we can explore that more, going
yes. Well,
forward.
okay,
Her as an individual, like what's happening. Yeah, yeah,
perfect segue. Perfect segue. Okay, next question. Circa Green Lantern 11, you've
yeah,
got the introduction of sorrow. You've got sorrow and sadness as a it's in the spectrum now. That was a big
yeah,
diary reading moment. I was like, for years I've been saying, why is there not a ring, a spectrum for sadness? That is such a powerful emotion. It is so common. I deal with sadness and light depression and stuff like
yeah.
that. How is this not on the spectrum and playing a big role in the Green Lantern mythos? So thank you so much for that. Thank you also for the trashy wedding vows between Carol and the guy that became Sorrow, because
Yeah,
I felt like as a reader, I was like, yeah, I am supposed to feel like this is an injustice to marriage. They're totally mistreating marriage here.
yeah,
It should be more than this. You put that cry in my heart, and I have to believe that you did that for many other readers as well.
yeah,
So in a wonderfully subtle and humorous way, that said to me, marriage is so much more weighty in significance than this, and we need to
yeah,
treat it that way. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so my question, I think there's so much potential for Hal and Carol as now a committed couple.
yeah,
Carol is reflecting on the fact that she hurt Sorrow, and she's got to own up to that. She's got to figure out how to help him and stuff. It's so reminiscent of how playing the field can damage so many people, both the people involved in playing the field, and then also it can damage people for that future relationship they actually decide to get committed and serious about. They've got all this baggage that's come with them. I think there's so much potential there. I think you could have like a
yeah,
whole arc of like dealing with the exes of Carol and Hal, but and the
yeah, yeah.
emotions, the emotional spectrum that comes with it. But do you currently have anything planned or ideas in mind for a story that focuses on Carol and Sorrow? And I ask this recognizing that, if we fix Sorrow, if we heal Sorrow, we lose a great antagonist here. We lose a great story device. But at the same time, I feel like there's so much potential there for that really to be leaned into and addressed between those two characters. Do you have any things stewing in your mind at this point to address that?
I know, well, I can't say anything without spoiling anything.
Sure,
So I
sure.
will say that I think that a lot of these Spectrum characters, I'd like to use in the future sometime, but we're in the middle of this event that started in Green Lantern 25. And so there's a lot of stuff that's going to be moving. And also, the truth is it's like this is the hard truth of things that I've experienced as somebody when I was dating was like if they broke up with me, they don't necessarily want to have a conversation with me. And then
Mm.
if I broke up with them, I don't necessarily want to have a conversation with them. So the reality is, Carol's having a great time with Hal. And like she sees that Sorrow is in this pain. And Sorrow is very forthright, being like, yeah, I'm trying to stop it. And I'm sure there's a lot of guilt around it. But I'm hoping that I can have a little more. Oh man, it's so hard. It's so interesting when you're doing a monthly comic and you're also like GL and GL Core kind of connected. And there's a bigger story, and you're always going, I don't have enough pages.
Yeah.
I don't have enough pages. Like Star Sapphire needs her own to like
Oh,
really explore
that'd be
some of
great.
these topics because, like you said, I want to have more conversation with what's going on inside her head and what's going on in Hal's head. But like Hal's the point guy on the GL book, Kyle's in the background, and then you start going further down to how many characters can I have and how much time do I have.
Yeah.
So I think her obviously power is derived from love, so she has some of that. But you'll have to see what happens.
Okay.
And
All
that's
right.
all I'm going to say.
That's fair. Okay, so Carol's power is
All right.
love. You're just
All right.
helping me with all my segues here. Carol's
Yeah,
speech in
yeah.
GL12. I love you. I'm committed to you. How she's got a whole speech. It's wonderful. It's I think reflects substantive
Yeah.
love as opposed to the CW brand of love that most people think about.
Oh,
Have you
sure.
had the concept of New Testament agape love in mind when writing Carol, or have you had other biblical passages on love when writing Carol? And as a follow up question, do you happen to know, was it Jeff Johns who named the Zamaron queen Aga'Po, or was someone else having fun with the New
I don't
Testament
know.
Greek lexicon? Because you have to be in a New Testament
Sure.
Greek lexicon to
Sure.
come up with that name.
100% you do.
So,
100%.
anyway, your
Well,
thoughts.
I don't know. With love, I mean, obviously, you know, C.S. Lewis's book, Four Loves, like there are different types of loves. I always think about those types of loves, but it's not like a conscious like, oh, other than love is patient, love is kind, all that obviously is wrapped up in that. You think about love as justice, you love is, discipline. Like there's different types of love. And I think that that's its own spectrum in its own way, which is
Hmm.
that I've been ruminating on. But also I think about when I married Amy, my wife, I remember being like, somebody was reading a book on marriage. It wasn't Amy, but I was just like, the person who wrote it had been married for like 5 years, and I'm like, you should throw that away. You know? I don't think that's. I think you listen to people that have been married 50 years. I
Yeah.
think you listen to people that have been through it, and when you realize that it's more than just a feeling, when you realize that feelings come and go depending on maybe what you ate for lunch,
Yeah.
there is love, it's like all those emotional spectrums are wrapped up in love. It's like sometimes it's the will to just
Hmm.
through because you know that somebody is blah blah blah. It's being compassionate for blah blah. It's hoping for something that it's all those things. And so I've been married 16 years, and I think that I have a little more perspective on it in terms of going like, oh, and there was this old couple, and I remember very early on, and they were just like, you're gonna get out of the stage where it's just like, oh, you look over every problem in your spouse. Then you're going to like you recognize the humanity of you both, but then you'll get past it and you'll just kind of enjoy each other and enjoy you're quirky and you're different and you have things that bug each other, but it doesn't matter. I built a life with this lady, and for Hal and Carol, I just kept thinking that they grew up together. They've known each other since they were
Mm.
little. They've seen the good and the bad. And I say it in that flashback. It's like you can't fall in love with the person you grew up with, right? Like we know too much about each other, but that's exactly why they can
Mm.
never be apart. They've created too many threads between each other. So it wasn't, every wedding you go to, love is patient. Love, it all comes out in Corinthians, and it's like I get it. Um, that wasn't my I wanted to also explore the other dynamics of love, and
Great.
as I see them. And obviously I see them from being a Christian man that like thinks about these things in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay. So
yeah.
I'm curious how deeply you think about some things. GL14, the Amazo android, says choices are merely pre-programmed responses. Alan Scott replies, if that is true, then nothing in this universe matters. Now that logically follows, but you have to think about that a bit to understand why. Do you have a philosophical bent or an interest in Christian apologetics? Because I could almost see this exchange being written by someone coming fresh off of listening to a William Lane Craig debate.
I grew up debating all the time with friends and colleagues. And in college, I would particularly pick classes that I knew I could debate the professors in. And I was just arrogant enough to think that I could pull it off. And hilariously, I mean, you have to have a level of arrogance. And it's interesting because let's see, I went to college from 95 to 99. And at that time, he's popular now. It's wild to me because he was very impactful to me. But Cliff Knechtley would come to my
Oh,
school all the time, and he would just be out there debating, but he would do it in the most respectful manner I'd ever seen.
hmm.
It wasn't just I'm trying to overthrow you. It was very good faith conversation, and one of the most profound things I ever saw him do was say, "I don't know." And I was like, I've never heard an apologist say that, you know? But yes, I think about a lot. My brother, who had gone to school to become a minister, my dad and I would argue all the time. My, mom and I would have discussions all the time. I love philosophy. I love politics. I also leave space knowing that a lot of what I think is wrong,
Hmm.
not in terms of my faith, but like there are nuances to that, nuances to politics that I just will morph over time. And
Hmm.
but with the one unshakable, that's why I mean like the unshakable is I'm the thief on the cross. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
it's like he saved me, guys. Like, what can I tell you? Or the other guy who was blind and could see, and they're like, well, he can't do that. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you. I was blind and I can see. Like, I don't know what to
Yeah.
tell you. I don't know how people operate without a loving, personal God. I have a hard enough time doing it with a loving personal God.
Hmm.
But it provides me so much comfort and joy. But yes, the debates are always there. I love having those conversations. And what's interesting about comic books is um, it is not, it is incredibly more complicated, the philosophical debates, because we're in a world where magic is and Superman
Hmm.
is and
Yeah.
all these things are, and gods are not gods. And so it's an interesting exercise in some of those
Yeah.
things. But that particularly, I mean, the reality is we're moving toward, and you'll see it in the next Green Lantern Corps, we're moving toward a world in which people are having relationships with AI, you
Oh.
know, and we start to have a real conversation about like what is real choice,
Hmm.
what separates us from this,
Yeah.
and I think all that's very fascinating.
Okay, so I want to ask you about the kind of I'll combine these topics, truth and honesty.
By the way, you kept saying like I was going to say yes or no. Obviously, I gab, so it's like okay,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
all
No,
right,
it's all good. It's all good. But we've got stuff to hit, and I want to hit it. Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum #1. Jessica Cruz says basically that we're going to help all these people who are channeling the emotional spectrum. It's out of control. We're going to show them that emotion can be controlled, molded by sheer will.
yes.
So my question is, what do you think of the idea that truth, although it doesn't have a color on the spectrum, has a vital role to play in controlling our emotions or in fueling our sense of hope? Most people, I feel like, have a bootstrap concept of will and hope, where we just will and we just hope and we just, but we don't really give a reason for why we will, why we choose,
Mhm.
why we hope. But I see truth as really vital to empowering my will to do particular things, to overcome particular fears. I need to bring certain truths to mind. For me to have hope, a real grounded hope that's actually going to endure circumstances, there's certain truths I need to reflect on. What do you think about, so it's a dual question. What do you think about the potential role of truth in the emotional spectrum? And on a somewhat related topic, do you have any potential thoughts or plans for honesty to return as a vital component for Green Lantern recruits, as it used to be the first of two things mentioned, honest and fearless, when the Jeff Johns rebirth thing happened, which I love. I love Jeff Johns. But we lost any, talk of honesty, and it really became about overcoming fear. So, thoughts about
Okay.
truth and honesty as related to the Green Lantern mythos.
So I think that that it's interesting about the truth and honesty as far as the mythos. Right now, at least in the book, it's not something I thought about bringing back in terms of like objectively like mentioning because right now their ranks are so low. They're trying to just tin star marshal everybody that they can that has enough willpower to kind of like control this energy. The will of it is interesting because I remember reading this article about willpower being something that's actually limited in our own lives. You have a limited amount of willpower per day, basically. If you don't want to eat chocolate, well, that takes a little bit of it away. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But my point being that, like, the objective truth of will, there's this great phrase in recovery that's called halt, and it's called you don't make, basically you don't make a decision, you have to halt, which is you make your decisions after you've taken care of these things. If you're hungry, you eat. If you're alone, you get together with, or it's hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're angry, you try to talk. If you're lonely, you get together with somebody. If you're tired, you take a nap. Because those are like real world things that can absolutely affect your view on objective truth. And the best way is like if you get a text message from somebody that somebody because you can't detect sarcasm or certain emotional things and you can be really angry at it. And on the other end of that phone, the guy was just having fun and had no malice whatsoever. But because you didn't eat a hamburger for lunch, you're just like, angry about it. Willpower to me is the ability to control those emotions so that objective truth can shine through. Because willpower never made sense to me as an emotion and never will.
Yeah, me either.
But in my own life, willpower is a controlling mechanism for overcoming fear, for hoping. Like I have to use my will to go, even if I don't hope, I got to pretend to hope.
Yeah.
Oh, even if I'm afraid, I'm going to walk into it.
Or in what I was saying, I still need to use will to bring
Yes.
certain truths to mind.
Yes.
So it's really it's a dual thing going on.
Yes, and I use a lot of like acronyms and stuff that I've heard, because family members in recovery, I have gone to Al-Anon meetings a lot, and I think they're fascinating. And there'd be like fear as an acronym is like false evidence appearing real. I think I have Kilowog say that one time, and it's this idea that we as humans. And you see it all the time. If you have siblings and you recall your youth, they see it in a totally different way than you see it. But there is a truth there. You just have to be able to find it, and that perception game can be really, really hard. So for the core, we're dealing with all these other alien species that have different philosophies, everything like that. So, they have to be able to control some of that. But, you'll have to see this new run to see what's going to happen anyways.
Okay, great. Okay, so just a comment here instead of this being a question, I'll just make it a quick comment. Aquaman.
Yes.
Thank you for the freaking water powers, for giving him the ability to telekinetically control water. Back in like the early 2000s when I was in college running a DC Heroes tabletop RPG group,
Yeah.
in my DC universe, Aquaman could control water telekinetically. He was Magneto of water because I
Yeah.
thought no one makes fun of the god of H2O. Everybody's got H2O in their body. Aquaman in my DC universe, if it came down to it, could bat around Superman like a rag doll just by grabbing the H2O and flinging him around.
Sure.
And you easily seem to have him on a path that could take him to that level of power.
I've already hinted at it with the blood moving like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I really hope that this is permanent. I know you only have so much control over that. I freaking really hope this is permanent. I know that on the downside, it's got Mara losing that power. If there's a way for Mara fans, for her to get that power back and him to still have it, like he just needed to, I don't know, get a taste of it, and then he figured out it unlocked Atlantean whatever. I don't know. There's all kinds of ways it could be done.
Like a decent, that's really credit to my editor because after Absolute Power, powers were shuffled. I don't even know if they're back, if anybody, but
Oh yeah.
they were like, "Hey, can Aquaman do this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "But how can I do it in a way that's different than what Mara does? Because Mara,
Mm,
she can basically wield it like a construct, like she can,
yeah.
and he's doing brute force,
Mm.
But I love it.
Oh,
And
it's awesome.
and by the way, a lot of people love it, so I don't see it leaving anytime soon.
Awesome. Great. Okay. So, Aquaman number 3, Arthur's dad.
Yes.
Great speech. He says at the end, it doesn't matter what others say about me or what they say about you. Sometimes we are called to things, and this is my calling. And I strive to be like this lighthouse, to serve those out there, to stand tall in the storms and light the way home for anyone in the darkness, no matter what. My eyes were brimming with tears reading this. My wife had a similar reaction when we went on a walk and I opened my phone and showed it and read it to her. Did you happen to have the life
Yeah.
of the Christian in mind at all when writing these words? Because I can't think of another cross section of humanity that would resonate with that sentiment more. Exactly that scenario. That, I mean,
Well, it's like in Colossians, like whatever you do, do it as if you're doing it for the Lord. That kind of like whatever you're doing, you do it to the utmost of your ability. And it is twofold. It's like obviously the father in this situation is very much a shepherd and I think about it. I think about it in terms of a lot of my little monologues are laced with my religious leanings or the wonderful wisdom that's present in the Bible or whatever. And I think that's the stuff that resonate with me and him as a lighthouse keeper and him being somebody that is very fulfilled with his task, but also recognizing the value of it is important. But yes, I mean, it's either subconscious or conscious, but I do remember being like, whatever you do, do it as if for the Lord was being present in my mind because I don't think of Arthur's dad being ashamed of who he is or what he does. And he's also raising a boy and he's trying to show that this boy, when Mario Puzo wrote the script for Superman, it was a Christ allegory, and I think probably my favorite character in that movie is Superman's dad,
mm,
and so that was always resonant in my mind too. It's like I know that you're here for a reason, and it's not to kick field goals. Like, you're here for something more. And I think anytime, that's what resonates with us as humans. I think that's where that God-shaped hole in our heart, it's like we're here for something more.
mm,
And, Christ is offering us that and saying, hey,
yeah,
listen, I can fulfill the programming, like
yeah.
it's here.
Well, and on top of that, you had that parallel where the lighthouse keeper as a job is looked down on, and Aquaman as a hero is not taken seriously and is seen by many to be ridiculous. That's the component there where it's
Yeah,
like it's not just that they are part of, like, let's say, a demographic that others look down on and mistreat. Many demographics are that, but it is also
sure.
an essential part, a defining part of their demographic to be a servant to others and to help
Yes.
others who
Yes.
who are on a path of darkness. And that's where I saw like that incredible resonance with the Christian life. So
Yeah.
intentional or not, I thought it was beautiful.
Oh, it is, but it's also like I also think about one of the things that when I was looking at Aquaman, it's like we don't know much. It's same with Hal to a degree. A lot of these Silver Age guys or Golden Age characters, it's like we don't know much about their upbringing. Superman, we know tons. Batman, we know his parents died. Like, and so it's a really fun way to go. This guy had a great dad. He had
Yeah,
this great role model because he can very easily have done something else.
yeah.
And I like this kind of stoic dad that really imparts this good wisdom on him. Anyways,
All right, I think just one question left. But first, a comment that was going to be a question, but I'll just make this a comment and a thank you. Green Lantern 21, Carol says to Hal, your gut is wildly unreliable. I loved that line. I don't know if it was a
yeah,
gentle, intentional pushback at the popular mantra to follow your heart, do what feels right, you do you, all that kind of stuff
yeah,
of just but I loved that. Thank you for that little nugget. I felt like that the economy of that comment, you didn't go off in a big diatribe. Like you said, you're so limited in how much you can fit in, but that there was so much
yeah.
strength to that few number of words. So thank you for that. But
And
my
by the
last,
way, that's not a commentary. that's not a commentary on the world at large. That's a commentary on me.
Oh, sure,
Like that's a
yeah.
commentary on
Yeah, on all
the
of us.
reality of your gut's terrible. Like, do
Yeah.
not lean on your own understanding because it's awful,
Yeah.
and I just over and over I keep finding myself going like, oh yeah, like the biblical ethic, the Christian ethic of don't sin isn't because it doesn't feel good. It's because the ramifications usually don't feel good. The chains that bind you don't feel good. It's
Yeah.
it's always after effect. It's always that thing that drags you down, and you go in. My belief is that God wants you to feel free, wants you to
Yes.
feel unburdened, and the more, and He's giving you these instructions. Like, I'm not trying to take away your fun. I'm just trying to put it in context and understand that, like, if you live this way, it's going to be miserable. You may not see it now, but you're going to be broken and alone and all this stuff. But if you live this way, you can have a really fulfilling life.
Mm.
And sometimes, if you don't in the Christian faith and you end up being martyred or killed, which is
Mm.
a thing all over the world,
Yeah.
I'm not a prosperity gospel guy. I'm a realist. It's like, but then the next life will be even better.
Mm.
You'll have those treasures stored up for you. So,
Mm.
anyways, keep going.
No,
Sorry.
that's great. That's great. Okay, so Green Lantern 23. All
Yes.
right. And then I'm going to get you out of here.
Okay.
Hal says to the Spectre, and by the way, the John Ostrander, Tom Mandrake run of the Spectre is one of my favorite runs of all time. Sure, there was some stuff
Yeah.
theologically that was wonky, but I was shocked at how much was biblically based. I mean, that's the character's
Right.
origins are based in Judeo-Christianity. But anyway, so I'm invested in the Spectre. Love that you
Right.
returned. That it made so much sense that Hal, yeah, this feels overdue. Yeah, we wanted to get him out of there and get people past thinking of him as the Spectre, but we never circled back, and I'm so glad
Right.
that you did. So Hal says to the Spectre in this
Yeah.
confrontation in Green Lantern 23, make sure you let whoever says yes to being the next host know everything, what they have to see, and what they have to do. The burden is heavy, Spectre. You'll need someone that can
Yeah.
bear it. My shoulders are too weak. I
Yeah.
love that because people often will tend to have an idea of poo-pooing God's wrath,
Yeah.
but there are things in this world. We might disagree on what those things are, but everyone will tell you about a particular thing that they would say, that deserves some wrath, dang it. Why is this happening in the world? There are things in the world that require wrath, and yet God says several times in Scripture, I don't want anyone to perish. I
Yeah.
want you to turn and live. I don't want you to go down this path that will ultimately require wrath. So I just love that you held those things in tension seemingly in writing that exchange. That like there wasn't like a saying Hal wasn't saying wrath is unnecessary. He was saying that
Right.
like, oh my gosh, who can carry this burden? And in my mind, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, we can't. We can't. And
Right.
really, I think the journey of whoever's going to be the Spectre needs to be the realization that, you know what? I can't, I'm not up for this.
Yeah.
This can't be my job. This can't ultimately be my responsibility. So, okay, you featured, with that in mind, with this great brief exchange in mind, you featured the Spectre as a
Yeah,
guest in.
by the way,
No, sorry, what were you going to say?
oh, I was going to say that's so much of what I felt because if you were the wrath of God and you had to perform these things and you were,
Or even be a passenger seat driver.
yeah, I mean, it's Jesus to me has incredible empathy and he weeps and he
Yeah.
cries and he knows. And it's like, that's the thing. It's like if and by the way, that's any good leader. Any good leader, whether it's president or whatever, and says, "Hey, we got to drop a bomb on these guys to do X, Y, or Z." It's like I might know this is the proper response, and yet I know that innocent people will die, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And even if you're absolutely just in whatever you're doing, it does not mean that you cannot feel bad or sad for having to do it.
Yeah.
Because as a parent that it's like you have to discipline your children in a way sometimes and you're going, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Like,
Yeah.
I feel terrible that my daughter's crying because she ate the candy without asking or whatever,
Yeah.
and I have to go, okay, well, you don't get candy tomorrow, but and you're sitting there going, like, in your heart you're like, this is crushing me, my daughter's.
So see, I hear you saying this, and that's why I wonder. You featured the Spectre in two stories.
Yeah.
Do you have a pitch in your head for a Spectre series that you would write, and would he still be the agent of God's
Oh,
wrath?
no, I don't know. I mean, I have pitches for so many ideas, and
Yeah, but I'm
most of the
asking,
time
is
they go,
that
no,
one
that's
of
too
them? Is
crazy.
that one of them in there, or not yet?
No, 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 the reason no is because I do think it'd be incredibly difficult.
Oh
Like if you
yeah.
wanted something that was, uh, like here it is, here's the Christian polemic by Jeremy Adams, like that would be it because I do think but I also think it's hard. There's a story about Ghost Rider. The original story of Ghost Rider was that, the devil is going to take his soul and he becomes a Christian. And so he
Hmm.
becomes like, no, you can't. And that was his way out. And Marvel's like, no, you can't do that. And I was like, ah, it's too bad, but because it solves a lot of problems quickly,
Hmm.
you know. I don't know. Got my wheels turning. So,
Okay. I'm happy just to have done that. Well, okay. This has been great. I've kept
all right.
you way longer than I intended to. Thank you so much for your time.
I had so much fun. Yeah.
I hope that people are. What could you say? Why should people be excited about Green Lantern and Aquaman coming up? And I'll just leave it with that.
Green Lantern is a much bigger story. Kyle is going to take a definitely a more prominent role in the book. Hal has a huge journey to go on that I think is really interesting, and it's so much fun to keep rolling in this book. Like the fact that DC has let me do it for this long is preposterous. So I'm very really grateful. For Aquaman, I wish more people read it because I think they think it's one thing, like about Atlantean politics or whatever, and it's really, high fantasy with Captain Nemo and Zan and all, and it's a kind of old swords and sorcery, but it's going to get much bigger as we lead into DCKO and has integral plots in there. And I'm excited to see what will happen because Aquaman is no joke. After next issue, you're going to be like, holy cow. Is there anybody that can beat Aquaman? That's kind of the vibe. So
Awesome. Okay. Well, you got me excited. I'll let you go. Thank you so much. I
I
super
appreciate it. I
appreciate it.
appreciate what you're doing. I love seeing pop culture through a Christian lens. So it's always great.
Oh, good. All right. Well, take care. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Bye
Bye.
bye. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.